Ravi Ravindra has been a speaker at KFA events. His talk at the KFA was a disgrace to Krishnamurti. The title was event Self-Knowledge, Journey of the Soul with Ravi Ravindra. It wasn't like they didn't know Ravi. Ravi had been talking there before. They knew exactly what Ravi is about. Yet they bring him back again and again. He's a friend of Mark Lee's. And early 90s, Ravi Ravindra wrote an awful book called... He accuses K or says cheap things like a tabloid. That, oh yeah, Krishnamurti wanted to have young virgin women around and da 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 da. Okay, whatever. A trustee wrote to me saying, I do think that Ravi Ravindra has no right to speak on K after the condescending manner in which he wrote about K after his death. Listening to Ravi's talk was like pulling teeth. It was painful. So many examples. I didn't even want to waste time writing it all down. He seems to want to take K and fit him into traditions. And Mark Lee, I believe, has same inclinations. He told me years ago about this. He told me years ago that K would just dissipate into traditions, merge the traditions. I wholeheartedly disagree with him. And these latest actions of the foundation, KFA particularly, is very disturbing because it seems like it's going in this direction. And in going that direction, they're diluting Krishnamurti. They're doing Vedic chants. It's like maybe Jaap can answer, how many times did Krishnamurti sponsor Vedic chants at the KFA during his long life there, or even before there was KFA? The answer is probably none. How many people were banned from his talks? I have not read of any. How many bodyguards did he have? None. You see, it's a huge difference in the style of Krishnamurti. The freedom, the love, and the purity, the carefulness, the elegance, beauty, the intelligence versus what is happening. Basically, Ravi was promoting some ideas which Krishnamurti for decades was discarding. And it's very clear to me, and also Ravi has said it himself, that Krishnamurti for Ravi Ravindra is like, and you can hear him. And why? My personal opinion is, first of all, usually when people study K but it goes, it's because the ego is too strong. Because if you really study Krishnamurti and apply it, it's death of the psyche. It's death of your I. Not a final event in time, but it's a moment to moment. But you come upon that psychological death. But if the self doesn't want to die psychologically, then all of these things become a big challenge to it, because it needs to sustain itself, and so it just goes like this. Another reason usually is because there's not a genuine study. When somebody doesn't genuinely study this, then it goes like this. So when I hear Ravi Ravindra talk, it's my opinion, I don't want to degrade him, but the thing, and similar thing with some of the trustees of KFA actually, when I hear them talk about these subjects, like, did they even read one book or try to really absorb this stuff or not? Because it just sounds like phew. In the case of Ravi's talk, he's quoting a lot of scriptures and coming out with what I believe to be flat out wrong ideas, which is so contrary to K's work and this sublime, very important message and teaching, which is so helpful to the state of the world. Why is he talking here? And from what I heard, Jaap's response was that at times he uses language and stories that rankle the orthodox JK people. This is a real insult, because first of all, I mean, personally, I'm not insulted, but to anybody who is a student of K, for somebody to tell him, you are a orthodox JK believer or whatever, this is a real insult, because the whole point of K is about freedom. It's about you finding out. It's not about K. K is out the door. He's not even important. It's the pointers and the challenges that you find out firsthand. It's the truth that each individual finds, and whether somebody like Rumi or Hegel or whomever or Plato or whomever has a role, or your father or mother or your teachers. Those people are just pointers. It's you that need to find truth. So all those people are out. And if you're a really astute student of all this, you wouldn't be an orthodox, because orthodox means fanatic, a belief system, a dogma, repeating things which have no connection to facts, possibly, discarding anything which doesn't fit your belief, the stiffness, the control, and all of these things which come out as a result of fanaticism. But if you listen to Ravi's talk, you will see that Jaap is wrong. It's not about his language and stories at all. And this response of KFA shows how little they understand the problem. And that's also Krishnamurti 101. It's like, you cannot solve a problem if you don't understand it. He's apparently totally confused about Kay's discussion about psychological/spiritual becoming versus practical progress, by comparing it with Glenn Gould, who says the piano plays itself. And Ravi says, well, I went to the piano and realized that it's not playing itself, and I know that Glenn practiced a lot, so it was this practice which made him to become so good. Therefore, becoming has a role, practice has a role, and Kay says, da da da. Because it's like Krishnamurti 101, you know, practical versus psychological, whatever. He repeatedly referred to spiritual traditions and attempted to fit Krishnamurti into tradition. He went on to promote concepts which Kay directly discarded, promotes bankrupt concepts like higher versus lower self, quotes traditions, hints at the concept of time as a means to change, promotes spiritual hierarchy, the many levels of the self, and other such nonsense. And then he says, the nonsense he's promoting, as though it's Kay, is difficult. You know, he comes up with all this nonsense as though it's kind of related to Kay's work, and then he says, oh, and it's difficult. Yeah, nonsense is difficult. I agree. The attempt to push Kay down the tradition pit seems in line with Mark Lee's belief he stated to me some years ago, and more recently to a friend of mine, that Kay would eventually get absorbed into traditions. This is a dangerous idea which could lead to carelessness and recklessness. He spent a lifetime standing alone, strong and tall, against a strong current of tradition. And now I believe his foundation, via this speaker and so on, is going against that, which makes sense given Mark Lee's attitude stated above, and the fact that he's close friends with Ravi Ravindra, and that may have something to do with his coming back to KFA again and again. One of the confused members of the audience asked, what am I to do? What am I to do? Sure enough, the answer was completely, how can I say this politely, idiotic. Ravindra said, see what you are not. The person says, what am I to do? And Ravi says, see what you're not. He said, becoming aware of what you're not brings freedom. So profound, Ravi. Becoming aware. How can you become aware of what you're not? This is Ravi Ravindra. The chief contribution of Krishnamurti is frustration. The words make sense, but nothing is clear. Oh, poor Ravi. I have news for you, my friend. Not my friend, we don't really know each other, but I have no hard feelings for you. Nothing personal. This is just an intellectual challenge. Kay was very clear. Very, very clear. He was an amazing frustrator, Ravi says. Of course, when you don't get it, it can be very frustrating. Even sounds esoteric to some who are close to him. Saying these kinds of things, Ravi reminds me of UG Krishnamurti, apparently confused and cynical of Kay as though it's Kay's fault. UG was a university dropout, but Ravi is an academic. I don't think either one studied Kay deeply. To top off a terrible talk, Mark Lee reminded the audience at the end that if they'd like to see it again, they can watch the webcast. Don't miss that talk, which KFA should really delete. It's really KFA should delete that talk. More and more signs of Ravi has a very superficial impression of Kay, and I don't believe he's ever studied deeply. He quotes Kay as saying, "If you see what is, it changes." Now, all the things that I recall Kay saying, he usually says, if you see what is without trying to change it, then it can change. Because if you see what is and then you try to change it, then that change cannot come about because you're moving away from what is. But Ravi completely drops that idea and kind of, I believe, partially quotes Kay. Ravi also disagrees with the concept of no effort. Obviously, because that has to do with that whole art of seeing, which apparently is missing from the way Ravi is putting it forth. Because if you see what you are and then you're trying to change it, then there's some effort involved. And Ravi doesn't get the idea of no effort, maybe because he doesn't get the idea of seeing without trying to change it. Which if he did, then he would properly quote Kay instead of in the idea without the full context. I couldn't believe that the traditions were all wrong. Well, Kay never said traditions were all wrong. That no effort was needed. Kay meant psychologically, but Ravi is mixing it up. Ravi is mixing up psychological with practical area, as demonstrated earlier. That there is no teaching, no teacher. I just don't agree with all these formulations, whatever. Ravi's big question to himself is, what is my part? The answer is end. But that's too threatening to the ego, which is the very block to grasping what Kay is talking about. End, psychologically. Because as long as the I is active saying, I'm confused, I don't know what my part is, well, the problem is because you exist. Psychological. So, great thinkers and great books have talked about the idea of dying during life, during the day, dying psychologically. There's great beauty in it. Like Kay said, death, love, and life go together. And death is not necessarily physical death. I think it's important to understand death and live with it while we're still alive, psychologically. That's a whole different subject.